And joining us now to discuss the budget is CBSN New York urban affairs expert Mark Peters. Mark was formerly the commissioner of New York City's Department of Investigation. Mark, welcome.
Good to be here.
There's a lot to talk about. Let's start with congestion pricing. This has been a hotly debated topic. Starting in 2021, motorists entering Midtown Manhattan below 60th Street will be charged a toll, but that excludes the West Side Highway and the FDR. So who wins and who loses in this deal?
Well, this is a historic deal, and it's the first time we're really confronting one of the big existential threats to New York City's future, which is the mass transit system and clogged streets. Mm-hmm. And what this will do by imposing these fares is it will raise about $1 billion a year, which is enough money for the MTA to float about $15 billion in bonds to pay for reconstruction of the subways, which is a big down payment on the roughly $40 billion people think we'll need over 10 years to begin fixing the subways.
Okay. One of the initial questions is, what about oversight for congestion pricing? Who is going to be in charge of deciding all of this?
Well, this is sort of one of the interesting things that's buried in the bill. The decisions on exactly how much gets paid and who pays, and more importantly, who gets exempted from paying this. These decisions are actually going to be made by a 5-person unelected committee. Only one of these people will guaranteed be representing the city and from the city. And so this represents a fairly substantial shift of power away from the city and over to the state, because suddenly this 5-person group is going to be deciding who gets to use the city streets, streets the city owns, streets the city maintains. This unelected group is going to get to decide who uses them and who has to pay and how much for them. And it's not all city people. In fact, it's not even a majority of city people who are going to be on this committee.
They'll have a lot of big decisions to make coming up.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. So let's talk about the mansion tax versus the proposed pied-à-terre tax.
So this was sort of a compromise. What a lot of people wanted was a pied-à-terre tax, which was an every-year tax on extremely expensive second homes. Instead, what we've gotten is a mansion tax. And the mansion tax is really a one-time tax on when expensive homes are sold. And so it'll raise a lot less money than the recurring pied-à-terre tax. But at least it's a first step towards raising money that can be spent both for the MTA, and I suppose in the future people could try to build on this to use some of this money for housing, although this is likely to go for the MTA.
So at the other end of the spectrum, let's talk about bail reform, which is trying to help people who don't have a lot of money and get caught up in the state's legal system. It would eliminate cash bail for non-violent crimes and most misdemeanors, but there are already some concerns and controversy over this.
Right. So to start at the beginning, I think you need to give the legislature and the governor a lot of credit. New York State's bail system, having been a prosecutor, the bail system is very antiquated, and it was in real need of reform. And so this was an important step towards reforming what had been an unfair system. Some people feel as though it actually didn't go far enough because there still is cash bail for a number of crimes. Some people worry that it's gone a little too far. I think the issue we're going to need to keep our eye on is domestic violence, because the way the bill is written, and it's dozens and dozens of pages just on this, the way the bill is written, misdemeanor sexual assault offenses, you can still keep somebody in prison after their arrest and before their trial. But misdemeanor assault, you can't anymore. And there are a lot of domestic violence cases that get initially arrested as misdemeanor assaults. And so what we need to keep our eye on now is this going to present a problem prosecuting domestic violence cases, because we're now going to let people who were arrested for misdemeanor assault go back home to the home where they may have committed the domestic violence, where the victims may be. And one of the challenges that prosecutors that we always face when we do these cases is if the victim essentially decides to drop the charges because the person who abused him or her has come back to the home, does that cause people to drop charges? So that's probably the big thing we're going to need to keep our eye on over the next year, because if in fact this makes it harder to protect victims of domestic violence, then I think the legislature is going to need to go back and think about fixing that.
Okay. One more topic that you flagged that some people might not be focused on is campaign finance. What can you tell us about that?
Well, this was probably the biggest disappointment for a lot of people in this budget. There had been a lot of pressure for a while building up now to deal with campaign finance reform and to put into place in the state a system similar to the city's system in which there's campaign financing so that large donations don't play such a huge role in politics. And essentially they punted on this. This was one where they just created a commission to come up with some proposals, but there's nothing specific that was done. And so this is the one thing where the legislature sort of put it off to another time, and I think that's a disappointment to some folks.
Got it. Mark, thank you so much. A lot of topics to cover, a lot of things to discuss. And of course, we want to hear your questions about congestion pricing and all of the budget issues. You can head to cbsnewyork.com or our Facebook page, and we will try to answer them.